you know, like to begin.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me here. I was excited to participate today for several reasons. First of all, we're part of the movie, about a third of it. The last third deals with global climate change, and well, that's one of my research interests. Second of all, in case you haven't heard my accent, I'm French. Well, I was excited to figure out what the movie was, and well, my first impression is on the meaning of home. I guess it really makes you think about what it means for several people, both in the developed world, the developing world, and also the third world. It makes you think about how we live, where we live, how we use resources or overuse them or waste them, and what we do with water, crops, and fuel. I mean, it has so many things, and I'm not going to touch on a lot of that because some people can talk a lot better than I can about ethics and biology and social and urban points. But what I wanted to focus on, I think we have like about 2 or 3 minutes each.
Well, as it's late, we could just leave space for questions, because I guess...
Well, no. I think people should say a few words.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm not going to take too much time, but some of the... I mean, the movie touches a lot of subjects on global climate change, like greenhouse gases and ice melting and ice not reflecting and sea level rising and rain cycles altered, floods, droughts, and hurricanes. And I was going to give a 2-minute explanation of the basic science, but I'm going to skip it. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to point you to the right direction or give you basic understanding. And I mean, some of the places you can find information is in the IPCC website, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, and it has a lot of free reports. I guess my last point is going to be we have to do something now if we don't want to end up like the Rapa Nuis.
Paul Adams?
Okay, everybody hear me? My research focuses on representation, which means I try to study how we convey ideas about things, and most of the things that I consider are places. So how do we represent places? And I think if people come away from a movie like this feeling the way I do, it's a little bit it's a little jarring and disturbing to interact with people who shrug all this off, people who chant drill baby drill, or be frankly offended that somebody might suggest that global warming is true. And to deal with some of this radical gap in how the world is viewed right now, because I think there's a certain group of people who are extremely concerned, and a lot of people who shrug it off, particularly in the U.S. We have to think very strategically about how we communicate. And if one appeal is not working, we have to think about other appeals. So a lot of the movie that we just saw is what I would call the tragic appeal, that is to say everything is going to hell in a handbasket, and to a large degree it is. I'm a great lover of amphibians, and I've watched the uncontrolled extinction of a lot of amphibians just in my lifetime. But the movie ends up with a much more upbeat discourse that sort of says, look, we can turn it around, we can mobilize and organize. And then, of course, there's a technocratic discourse that the movie tried to avoid, and in some cases it made some technical mistakes describing the processes it was talking about. So how do we balance the technocratic, the optimistic, the pessimistic? To me, this is an open question, but a movie like this certainly gets the discussion going.
Professor Sarkar?
I want to thank Jonathan and the organizers for having me here. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I had 2 separate reactions to the movie. One of them probably as a biologist, and I won't say very much about it. The other as a philosopher who teaches environmental ethics in this university. As a biologist, the reaction was, as often is, couldn't they have gotten things a bit more accurate and all of that, and a little bit of a failure on their part to make all the connections between the wetland destruction and things of this sort and also the connection between that, the rainforests and all of that. I was glad they didn't only talk about rainforests, but they also missed things that are even more threatened, dry forests in the tropics and things of that sort. As a philosopher, what I was worrying about most for the last week since I first saw the movie was why is this a French movie? Is there any sense in which this movie is not something that you'd see as standard environmental fare in the United States? And there is. The remarkable way in which this movie puts social concerns and environmental concerns together, how it talks about poverty at the same time as talking about biodiversity and all of that, is rather remarkably not in the American environmental tradition, where deep ecology and all of that stuff has tended to really be an environmental of the rich versus the poor, where people have, the famous occasion when the founder of Earth First was applauded the famine in Ethiopia because so many more people would die. I mean, that's the sort of thing that has been part of American environmental discourse, and this movie does not have that. And as a consequence, it's going to be a good teaching tool just because of the way it tries to balance different things. And in some sense, over there, it does reflect the European Green Movement a lot more than it does standard radical American environmentalism. But overall, I liked it. I think the hopeful message at the end was a good thing to have, though some of it, again, were I would have liked it if the technical details were correct. That 13% of the world's land is protected in some form or the other. They're not national parks. Strict protection takes it down to something like 3%. So there were numbers and things like that that I thought they should have researched better. But anyway.
Professor Pimpinelli?
Yeah, I really don't know why I'm here. I think I'm here just because I'm from the consulate. Well, I'm not an expert in this field. I'm a solid-state theoretical physicist, whatever that means. And, well, I will try to play the devil's advocate a little bit. I don't like it very much when everybody agrees. So, I mean, everybody agrees, we can stand up and go home. I'm a little bit disturbed by these kind of movies where there's this kind of, everybody has to love everybody else, and that's fine. On the other side, I mean, there's things I really don't like in the message when they talk about this balance, equilibrium in nature, or the climate, or whatever, which is something that simply doesn't exist. And also, I was very much disturbed by a sentence that I don't know if that escaped you or if you noticed that. When they said, we must believe what we know. And that's probably philosopher is very appropriate here. Either I don't understand the sentence, or I mean, either it's very profound or it's very stupid. What I mean, so, well, but I don't want to take time from you, so please.
Please raise your hand if you have questions. I have one. But if they say, at the beginning, like it's a whole construction of a thought about climate change and how life is, born, and so like it seems like we have to believe in what we say, because if we don't, at least in summing up all these bad effects, we see on the planet, what else could we think of as a sort of, kind of reflection on the dramatic change on the world we used to know? The point is that we don't know what is coming or what was previously our historical records. So, Professor Pimpinelli, I ask you, just, shouldn't we believe in what we presume these dramatic changes are going to the way they are going to affect our life?
Well, I want to ask a question, how to give the answer. But, I mean, what does it mean we have to believe what we know? Either we know it, and so we know it. Or, well, the point is, I think that still there's a lot of believing that goes on in all these environmental, ecological, climatic stuff. And that disturbs me. I think that either we do more pedagogical work, and I believe that this kind of movie doesn't help in that direction, or we have to keep asking people to believe, and I don't think that's good. We should know, not believe.